We have made our way from the beginnings of difficulties between the colonies and the mother country of England, and now we're coming to the place in this unit that has been entitled Declaring Independence, in which in this section we've not gotten to that point yet, but now we're getting to that place today where independence is going to be declared. To this point, it was all about trying to reconcile. It was about trying to get the British government to ease off, to allow them to continue to operate as they had been. But now in this section, we're going to see some changes taking place. So this part is called Free and Independent States. In 1776, changes were made in colonial constitutions. They changed from being a government which had a legislature which was subservient to the king to forming republican governments. And that simply means that there were representative governments established in each of the colonies. So no longer are they looking outside of their own particular colony for governance. But it's a republican form of government, not democracy, a republican form of government in which people have representatives making those governmental decisions. The Continental Congress, as its meeting, received a recommendation, a resolution actually, from Richard Henry Lee. His nickname was Light Horse Harry because he was a good horseman. He made this resolution: resolved that these colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. That's the most important part of that. He continues to explain that they are absolved of all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. That it is expedient forthwith to take the most effectual measures for forming foreign alliances, that a plan of confederation be prepared and transmitted to the respective colonies for their consideration and approbation. So you can see that, first of all, the resolution is that the colonies are no longer tied to Great Britain. We are free and independent. This is the beginning of the call for independence, at least officially. Notice what that consists. No more allegiance to the British Crown. No more political connection. That means there's no government from Great Britain towards the colonies. And with that in mind, we ought to do whatever we can to form foreign alliances. We ought to find other countries that will support us. And we also need to have a plan of confederation. In other words, we need to come up with a way for the colonies to come together, to band together as one country, not as simply separate colonies governing themselves. We need to come up with a confederation plan where we are brought together. Okay, there's a lot in that short resolution by Richard Henry Lee. Well, it was passed. Here is the room in which they were meeting in Philadelphia. And as a part of that passage, they realized that the resolution itself was not enough. They needed to draw up a document which explained exactly what they were doing. And so a committee was established in order to draw up a declaration of what they were attempting to do here. The committee was made up of John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, Robert Livingston, and Thomas Jefferson. Three of them are pictured here. Franklin, you recognize, I hope, Adams, and Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson told John Adams privately that Adams should be the one to draw up the Declaration, actually do the writing of it. After all, Adams had been the one who had written so much on the principles of government and had written the new Constitution for the state of Massachusetts. So he certainly had the experience, had the background, had the knowledge to be able to come up with a Declaration of Independence for the American colonies. But Adams insisted that Jefferson should do the writing. When Jefferson asked Adams what his reasons were for not composing the document, Adams, very cognizant of who he was and of his place in relationship to the other members of the Continental Congress, replied, "Reason first, you are a Virginian, and a Virginian ought to appear at the head of this business." Again, we can't make it all about Boston. It's got to be more than that. Reason second, I am obnoxious, suspected, and unpopular. People don't like me. You are very much otherwise. Reason third, you can write 10 times better than I can. So here's Adams, the elder statesman, if you will, the man who'd been around, had lots of experience. He's handing it off to someone who is younger because he realizes that that younger person may do a better job, and will do a better job, and will cause less acrimony from the other members of the Continental Congress. That takes great wisdom to be able to do that. And you have to be a person who is not self-centered and wanting to receive praise yourself. John Adams didn't always appear humble, but in this case he certainly did evidence a humility. The expression that we find in the Declaration it says this, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, is attributed to John Witherspoon, who was president of the College of New Jersey, later called Princeton. While he was president of the college, and I'm telling you this because John Witherspoon had a great influence upon the founders of our country, and in particular those who were writing the Declaration of Independence. While Witherspoon was president of the College of New Jersey, 478 young men graduated. Out of those 478 graduates, 111 became ministers, 13 were state governors, 3 were U.S. Supreme Court justices, 20 were United States senators, 33 were U.S. congressmen, and Aaron Burr Jr. became vice president of the United States, and James Madison became president of the United States. John Witherspoon had a great influence, so I just want to mention his name because otherwise you won't see it much in history. But he had a great influence upon the men who wrote the Declaration, those who were involved in the Continental Congress, and ultimately writing the Constitution as well. This is a picture of Jefferson's home called Monticello up in western Virginia. Anybody ever been to Monticello? Very interesting place. He was quite innovative in a lot of ways, a brilliant man. And here are some pictures of his home which illustrate that. This is one of the rooms inside. He loved music. I think he invented this stand which swiveled so you could have music on one side and swivel it around to the other side as well. And as you go through his mansion, you find a number of things that he invented. One of the things he invented was the dumbwaiter. You know what a dumbwaiter is? I'm not talking about that server you get at a restaurant that doesn't know what they're doing. A dumbwaiter is a way to transport the food from the basement, which is where his kitchen was, up into the dining room above through like a little elevator, only it's hand-driven on a chain, rope, and he invented that. A number of things. He was a great connoisseur of wine. In fact, almost bankrupted him. He had so much wine imported from France, and of course books. He bought books and books and books. As Jefferson was given the primary task of writing this declaration with input from the other members, and then he would come back to them for suggestions, and there were areas, especially Franklin would notice things, would point out things that, no, we shouldn't say that, we should say it differently, and there were some things that, if you look at the original draft that he made, are crossed out. And so I have here the top 10 items cut from the original Declaration of Independence. The top 10 items cut from the Declaration. Here we go. Number 10, the request that the British keep New Jersey. No, that's not right. We can't tell them to keep the jersey. No one wants the jersey. Number 9. P.S. From John Hancock, have a groovy summer. That's too personal, John. Can't do that. Number 8. A gratuitous reference to King George as a wig-marrying crumpet monkey. That's not nice to say. Number 7. The statement, goodbye fish and chips, hello Colonel Sanders. Number 6. A gag signature of Peter Griffin. I don't know how that got there. Number 5. Tear off coupons good for a discount at the Philadelphia Ale House. Number 4. Offer to trade the Three Stooges for Monty Python. Number 3. A demand for more music and less talk. Number 2. To show there are no hard feelings, please find enclosed a package of Vermont maple candy. And the number 1 thing cut from the original Declaration of Independence is the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of Krispy Kreme donuts. So those were things that Jefferson had, but they decided not to go with those. All right, so here is the meeting of the Continental Congress as they are gathering to sign. Actually, this is the presentation of the Declaration to the Continental Congress. You can see the members of the committee standing here. George Washington, the president of the, I'm sorry, no, he's not president of the Congress yet. That'll be later. I don't remember who that is. But they're gathered here, and they vote to receive this declaration. They approve the resolution, the Declaration of Independence, on July the 2nd, 1776. Part of what is said in the Declaration is this: we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Reportedly, and Ben Franklin said of this, we must all hang together, or assuredly we shall all hang separately. Notice the play on words, not hang. Everybody understands that, right? For his time, a very fat Benjamin Harrison told the wispy Eldridge Jerry, here's Harrison. He doesn't look all that fat here, but I guess this was maybe when he was younger. He put on weight as he got older, and so he was a little bit overweight. And he says to Jerry, who is very thin, Jerry, when the hanging comes, I shall have the advantage. You'll kick in the air half an hour after it is all over with me. Because he's so heavy, he'll strangle more quickly. John Adams wrote his wife. Oh, there's the quote. Sorry, I forgot I had it on there. For the size and weight of my body, I shall die in a few minutes, but for the lightness of your body, you'll dance in the air for an hour or two before you're dead. All right, there's the full quote. Don't want that yet. John Adams wrote to his wife that July 2nd, the day the resolution was approved, would be celebrated in the future. He said, it ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations, by which he meant fireworks. I think you heard that there. Yeah, there it is. From one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore. So he felt that July 2nd would be the day of celebration. All those things did take place, except that we do it on, what? July 4th, which was not the day when the resolution was passed. That's the day that they began signing it. They didn't even complete signing it. It wasn't completely signed by everybody until August. But July 4th was when the copy was given there for people to sign, and that's the day we celebrate. Okay. Let's see. This quotation. Oh, it's from John Hancock. Remember John Hancock? What do you know about his signing of the Declaration of Independence? I'm sure you've heard this before. What did John Hancock do? He was the first one. He was the president of the Continental Congress, now that I think about it. He signed his name really large. You seen the signatures on the Declaration? His signature is larger than the rest. And he said this: "Let us humbly commit our righteous cause to the great Lord of the universe. Let us joyfully leave our concerns in the hands of him who raises up and puts down the empires and kingdoms of the earth as he pleases." So Hancock is expressing his reliance upon God to help them in this undertaking. Here's the signature of John Hancock on the Declaration. You can see the largeness with which he wrote. Does anybody know why he wrote his name so large? Stephen?
He greatly approved of it.
No, that's not it.
So the king could see.
Yeah, it says, so the king could see it without his spectacles. He wanted King George III to know who it was that was signing this. And of course, by signing this, they are declaring themselves as traitors to the English crown. Took a great deal of courage to do what they did. Let's see. I won't take time to do it today, but there's a very interesting narrative of what happened to many of the men who signed this declaration, who pledged to each other their lives, their sacred honor. Many of them were driven from their homes. Some of them saw their own families killed or imprisoned. Some of them saw their total fortune go down to nothing. They endured a lot. Some of them died during the war. Some of them were captured. These men were willing to sacrifice everything, and many of them did. It's an interesting story to go through many of the men who were the signers of the Declaration. All right, well, the grievances of the Declaration basically center around these areas. First of all, George III established a tyrannical authority in place of a representative government. Next, parliaments involved in destroying the colonists' right to self-rule. And thirdly, George III abandoned the colonies and waged war against them. And you're going to be looking more specifically at that as you complete the assignment for Monday, which is to read the Declaration of Independence, something that I don't think very many students do anymore. But I want you to read the Declaration, which is in the back of your books. For the older books, it begins on page 651. If you have one of the newer books, it's page 660, so close. And then you have a worksheet in your packet of materials on the Declaration of Independence. And I want you to answer the questions in your worksheet. The first part of the worksheet, I'm going to take a quick look at that. I think it's 2 parts, right? Yeah, do part 1 of the worksheet for Monday. Okay, let's get back to what happened as a result. We'll look more at the Declaration itself as you complete these questions for Monday. As news of the Declaration of Independence spread, great celebrations were held. New Yorkers tore down a gilded lead statue of George III, pictured here, and melted it down for use as shot in their muskets. In Worcester, Massachusetts, a big celebration was held that included saluting the event in the local tavern with toasts to, among other things, the perpetual itching without the benefit of scratching to the enemies of America. 12 years later, Benjamin Rush, the Patriot physician, stated, "I am as perfectly satisfied that the union of the states is as much the work of divine providence as any of the miracles recorded in the Old and New Testament or the effects of a divine power. 'Tis done. We have become a nation." And you find all through the writings of our founders this appealing to God, a reliance upon God, and then finally giving credit to God for what had transpired. This is the bell that was struck, which is now called the Liberty Bell, and it quotes from the book of Leviticus, "Proclaim liberty throughout the land." And you can see that as it is housed in Philadelphia. The the Continental Congress also approved a seal for our new nation, and this became the Great Seal. On the left side, we see a pyramid, which is unfinished with the all-seeing eye above it. Now, that's due to the influence of the Masons. There's a lot of Masonic influence, so many of the founders were Masons, and you can make of that what you want. Some see it as part of the worldwide conspiracy that actually, it's interesting that there actually is a worldwide conspiracy initiated by a group called the Illuminati. Maybe you've heard of them. And most of the time when people hear about the Illuminati, they think, oh, those crazy people that think there's a conspiracy all the time. Well, in the year 1776, in Germany, there was a German man whose name I forget who started the Illuminati. And I once had read a book which goes through statesmen from that time on up until it was written, which was just maybe 20 years ago, including many of our presidents who made statements that were in line with what the Illuminati was attempting to do. Unfortunately, my wife got me that book for Christmas one year, and after Christmas it disappeared. Like the conspiracy? Or did it just get gathered up with all the trash and somehow got put away? And it's kind of an expensive book, so I don't want to buy it again. But there is research that has been done on this. But anyway, so the Masonic influence is here. Anybody know what this says?
Novus Ordo Seclorum.
Very good. Okay, your Latin is pretty good. Now, what's it mean?
Oh, I don't know.
That means new. Order. Basically, that can be translated world. New world order. Now, that also sounds suspiciously like a conspiracy kind of thing, bring about a new world order, which relates to the Antichrist and all that stuff. A lot of people get into that. But what they meant by this was that the United States was embarking upon something which no nation had ever done before. Now, in a lot of ways, they were copying Rome's idea of a republic, but in many ways, they were departing quite strongly from that. The United States was going to be engaging in a form of government, a republican form of government, which had not been tried quite like this, where all the people are represented by their representatives in government. On the other side, we see the eagle as a symbol of America. Now, does anybody know what Ben Franklin, he objected to the eagle. He said it's too warlike of a bird. Does anybody know what bird Ben Franklin wanted? The turkey. Yeah. So if Ben Franklin had had his way, we'd be eating our national symbol every Thanksgiving. I think that would have been a good idea. But he wanted to have a more peaceful bird and one that tasted good too. But the eagle was passed. But what they did with the eagle is they have in one claw a branch, an olive branch, indicating what? Peace. And here are arrows, indicating. And in time of peace, the eagle faces this way. In time of war, the symbol has changed so that the eagle faces that way. Now here we have stars. You count them? 13 stars, representing the 13 colonies that are banding together. And here we have some more Latin stuff. Can you read that? E pluribus unum. You've heard that before, haven't you?
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does unum sound like? Is that
One.
unity or one? So it's out of many, out of the plurality, out of many, one. So out of the 13 colonies, we're forming one nation. All right, any questions? Stephen?
Why didn't they just write those in English?
Well, back then, anybody with any intelligence knew Latin, and it sounded better.
It looks cooler too.
Yeah, it looks cooler. That was still a time when people wrote and spoke in Latin, and when they were talking about things that were of high academic value. I suppose your common person maybe didn't, but remember, in order to even get into college back then, you had to pass a test in Latin and Greek, at least be able to read those in order to get in. And if you went to Europe to university, those lectures might be in Latin still. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to give you the rest of the time to work on the Declaration of Independence. So you get a good start on it, maybe you can finish it if you are diligent. So read the Declaration of Independence and answer the questions in part 1. Yes. 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 Yes.